Once again, before we start to actually mix, this is mixing, but we're prepping still. Let's go back and revisit our phase relationships between our mics. Mainly, we're going to look right now at the top, the snare top and snare bottom, their relationship to the overheads, and maybe even the kick drum. So for the most part, I think we talked about this during the sessions, and a couple of the groups, we ended up fixing it or addressing it at the mic preamp, where we had the ability to actually flip the phase or the polarity at the mic pre. You can see, for example, that our snare top and snare bottom are completely out of phase. And then when you look at the overheads, the snare top is out of phase with the overheads. So, question or something to consider when looking at this relationship, which one should we flip? It doesn't really make sense to flip the snare bottom because it's in phase with the other microphones, including the mono overhead. So what we're going to do is we're going to flip the snare top. All right, and what I like to do is just have a demonstration for you. That's enough to hear. Now, you can insert, I think, just about any EQ. Let's take a look at the TDR because I don't use that one off. I use it for EQ all the time, but I'm not familiar with it having a polarity flip. Okay, so I'm not going to spend my time looking. You might even see it, and I'm just passing it. I'm going to put in the EQ 1 band. I know for a fact that the 7 band has one, but because this is really not going to be used for EQ, I'm just going to use it to flip. Hear how much different that is? This is not even mixed. There's a lot of the snare bottom. Let's add the overheads. You can hear the low end in that snare, but it's less obvious once you add so many different tracks. How else could we do this? We don't have to use a plugin. We can select our snare top, go up to Audio Suite. I believe it's under Other, and Invert. And when you invert and then render, it literally takes that track's waveforms and flips them. So we're back in phase. We don't have to worry about a plugin. That is absolutely fine. All right, so now we know that our snares are in line with our overheads. Let's take a look at the kick. And the way that I'm going to do this is by actually looking where a snare drum hits on the kick track. All right, so that's a pretty big hit. And it does look very much like our kick track is out of phase. Let's look up or zoom up so I can see. All right, so the sub kick, actually everything's out of phase, isn't it? Well, let's look at, because the sub kick's not picking up much snare drum. And vice versa, kind of. I think what we'll do is we will flip let me just look at the snare again here. Okay, so the in mic, the kick in mic is definitely out of phase with the overhead. So let's go ahead and flip the kick in. see if we can get any significant differentiation. Let me put my overhead back where I want it. A little bit harder to hear, but there's definitely more low end. Let's see what happens if we add these in. Again, less obvious, but I'm comfortable enough based on the waveform to say that that was not going to hurt anything. All right, so we have addressed our phase relationships with our snare top mic, and we did go ahead and flip the kick in mic. And I think from there, that's about all that we really need to worry about.